The gunshot echoed across the canyon before Cole Harris even saw the smoke. He pulled his horse to a halt, scanning the ridgeline where buzzards circled in lazy spirals. 3 more shots cracked through the desert air, then silence dropped like a stone. Cole's hand moved to his rifle, fingers wrapping around familiar wood and steel. Something was wrong, dead wrong. He urged his mare forward, keeping to the shadows of the rock formations. The vultures meant bodies, and bodies in this territory meant the Dalton gang had passed through. Cole had been tracking them for 6 days, ever since they burned the trading post in Silver Creek and left 9 people dead. The marshal had deputized him on the spot, knowing Cole was the only man crazy enough to follow killers into the Badlands alone. The trail led down into a narrow wash where the sun beat against redstone walls. Cole dismounted, leading his horse on foot. His boots crunched on gravel, each step measured and quiet. Around the next bend, he found them. 2 wagons sat abandoned in the middle of the wash, canvas torn and flapping in the hot wind. Supplies were scattered across the ground like someone had ripped through everything looking for valuables. But it was the bodies that made Cole's jaw tighten. A man lay face down near the first wagon. Blood pooled dark beneath him. A woman was slumped against a wheel, her dress stained crimson. Cole approached with his rifle raised, eyes sweeping for threats. The Dalton gang liked to leave one man behind sometimes, hidden and waiting for anyone foolish enough to stop. But the wash was empty except for the dead and the circling birds above. Then the woman moved. Cole covered the distance in 4 long strides, dropping to one knee beside her. She was younger than he first thought, maybe 25, with blonde hair matted with blood and dust. Her eyes fluttered open, pale blue and filled with pain. "Easy now," Cole said, checking her wounds. A bullet had grazed her shoulder, deep enough to bleed badly, but not fatal if he could stop it. "How many were there?" 7, she whispered, her voice cracking. "They took my brother. Peter. He's only 15. Cole's blood went cold. The Dalton gang didn't take prisoners unless they had a reason. How long ago? An hour. Maybe less. She gripped his arm with surprising strength. They thought we were all dead. They thought wrong. Cole looked at the man by the wagon. "Your father? He is dead. They shot him first when he tried to fight." Her eyes hardened despite the pain. "I played dead. Listened to everything they said."
"What did they say?"
"They're meeting someone at Copper Ridge tonight." "Selling guns to the Apache," she coughed, wincing. "They took Peter because he saw the buyer's face." Cole processed this fast. Copper Ridge was 8 miles north, maybe 2 hours hard ride. If the gang was selling weapons to the tribes, it meant more than murder now. It meant war. Hundreds could die. "I need to get you to a doctor," Cole said. "No." She pushed herself upright, teeth gritted against the pain. "We go after them. Now." "You can barely sit up. My brother is alive because they want to use him or kill him slow. Either way, I'm not waiting." She looked him dead in the eye. "You can help me or get out of my way, but I'm going." Cole saw it then. The same fire he'd seen in soldiers who refused to quit even when the battle was lost. She wasn't going to back down, and taking her to town would cost an hour. They didn't have. He made his decision. "What's your name?" "Grace Bennett." "Can you ride?" "Yes." Cole helped her stand, supporting her weight as they moved to his horse. He pulled medical supplies from his saddlebag, wrapping her shoulder tight enough to slow the bleeding. Grace didn't make a sound, though sweat beaded on her forehead. "There's 7 of them and 2 of us," Cole said as he worked. "Those odds don't favor breathing." Grace picked up a rifle from the scattered supplies, checking the chamber with practiced hands. "Then we better shoot straight." Cole finished the bandage and met her eyes. She wasn't some helpless victim. She was a woman with nothing left to lose, and a brother to save. That made her dangerous in ways the Dalton gang wouldn't expect. "Copper Ridge," Cole said, swinging into his saddle and pulling Grace up behind him. "We ride hard, and we ride smart. When we get there, you do exactly what I say. Long as what you say is... kill them all." Cole kicked his horse into a gallop, racing toward the ridge where the sun was already starting to fall. Behind them, the vultures descended on the wash. Ahead, somewhere in the rocks and heat, 7 killers thought they'd gotten away clean. They were about to learn different. The desert flew past in a blur of red stone and scrub brush. Cole pushed his mare harder than he liked, but time was bleeding away with every minute. Grace held tight behind him, her injured arm pressed against his back. She hadn't complained once, hadn't asked to slow down. Whatever softness she might have had before the attack was gone now, burned away by violence and loss. "Tell me about the Dalton gang," Grace said over the thunder of hooves. "Everything." Cole kept his eyes on the trail ahead, watching for loose stones that could lame his horse. "Started as cattle rustlers 3 years back. 5 brothers all mean as snakes. They picked up 2 more guns last winter, drifters with murder in their past. They've hit 6 towns in 4 months, always moving, always killing anyone who sees their faces. You fought them before?" "Twice. Lost good men both times." Cole's voice went flat. "They don't fight fair, and they don't leave witnesses. That's why I'm wondering why they took your brother alive. He saw the buyer. So did you, I'd wager. Why not just kill you both?" Grace was quiet for a moment. "Peter has a talent. He draws. Not just pictures, perfect likenesses. He can look at a face once and capture every detail on paper. The gang leader, Frank Dalton, he saw Peter's sketchbook. Had drawings of our whole journey west. Understanding clicked in Cole's mind. They want him to draw the buyer. Insurance, maybe. Or blackmail. Which means they'll keep him alive until the deal is done. Then kill him." Cole didn't soften it. She needed to know the truth. Not if we get there first. They crested a rise, and Copper Ridge came into view, a jagged formation of rust-colored stone that jutted from the desert floor like broken teeth. The sun was dropping fast now, painting everything in shades of orange and purple. Cole pulled his horse to a walk, studying the landscape. "There," Grace said, pointing. "Smoke." A thin line of gray rose from behind the ridge, barely visible against the darkening sky. Someone had made camp. Cole guided his mare into a cluster of boulders and dismounted, helping Grace down. She swayed but caught herself, refusing to show weakness. "We go on foot from here," Cole said quietly. "Sound carries in these rocks." He pulled ammunition from his saddlebag, filling his pockets with bullets. Grace checked her rifle again, her movements quick and efficient. Cole noticed her hands didn't shake. "You've shot before," he said. "My father taught all of us. Said the frontier doesn't care if you're a woman. It'll kill you just as dead if you can't defend yourself." Her voice caught slightly. He was right. They moved through the rocks like shadows, keeping low and quiet. The temperature was dropping with the sun, but sweat still ran down Cole's back. Every sense was heightened, every sound amplified. A lizard skittering across stone made him freeze. The distant cry of a hawk set his teeth on edge. The camp came into view as they rounded a tall outcropping. 7 men sat around a fire in a natural hollow between the ridges. Cole recognized Frank Dalton immediately, tall and broad with a scar running down his left cheek. His brothers were there too, along with the 2 hired guns. And tied to a scrubby tree at the edge of the firelight was a boy who could only be Peter Bennett. "I see him," Grace breathed. "He's alive. For now." Cole studied the layout. The hollow was maybe 40 yards across. Good cover on 3 sides, but open to the south. That's where their buyer would come from. "We wait for the meeting. When the buyer shows, everyone's attention will be divided. That's when we move. That's when we could lose him. That's when we have the best chance." Cole turned to face her. "You want revenge, or you want your brother back? Because we can't have both if we go on guns blazing." Grace's jaw worked, anger and fear warring in her expression. Finally, she nodded. "We wait." They settled into position behind a cluster of rocks that gave them a clear view of the camp. Cole counted weapons. Every man wore at least 2 pistols, and rifles leaned against rocks within easy reach. These weren't amateurs. They were killers who'd survived this long because they were good at what they did. "Listen up," Frank Dalton's voice carried across the hollow. "When Flores gets here, nobody talks unless I say so. This deal goes smooth, we'll have enough gold to disappear into Mexico for a year, maybe forever." "What about the kid?" one of the hired guns asked. Frank glanced at Peter. "Soon as he draws Flores' face and we confirm the gold's real, put a bullet in him. No witnesses, no problems." Grace's hand tightened on her rifle. Cole put his hand over hers, squeezing gently. "Not yet." She met his eyes and nodded, but he could feel her trembling with rage. The sun touched the horizon, bleeding red across the sky. Darkness gathered in the hollows and shadows stretched long across the sand. Then, from the south, came the sound of horses. 5 riders emerged from the dusk, moving in a tight formation. The leader was a man in his 40s wearing a Mexican cavalry officer's uniform, though the insignia had been torn away. His face was hard and weathered, eyes cold as winter stone. The other 4 were soldiers, hands resting on their weapons. "Flores," Cole whispered. "Former Federale." Went rogue 2 years ago, been selling guns to anyone with gold ever since. The two groups met in the center of the hollow, tension thick enough to cut. Frank Dalton stepped forward, hand hovering near his pistol. Flores did the same. For a long moment, nobody spoke. "You have the weapons?" Flores asked in accented English. 50 rifles, brand new Winchesters, ammunition to match. Frank gestured to 3 large crates stacked near the fire. "You have the gold?" Flores nodded to one of his men, who pulled a leather satchel from his saddle and tossed it at Frank's feet. Frank opened it, and even from 40 yards away, Cole saw the glint of gold coins. "Count it," Frank told one of his brothers. While the gold was being counted, Frank turned to Peter. "Boy, get over here and bring your paper." Peter was untied and shoved toward the fire. He stumbled, catching himself, then pulled a small sketchbook and pencil from his pocket. His hands shook as he looked at Flores. "Draw him," Frank ordered. "Every detail. You get it wrong, you die slow." Peter's pencil moved across the paper, quick strokes capturing Flores's hard features. The Mexican watched with narrowed eyes, hand never leaving his gun. The Dalton gang spread out slightly, surrounding the exchange. Flores's men did the same. Everyone was ready for betrayal. "Gold's all here," the brother counting announced. "Rifles are loaded and ready," Flores confirmed, having inspected the crates. The deal was done. In seconds, Peter would be dead, and 12 killers would scatter into the night. Cole looked at Grace. She was already sighting down her rifle, finger on the trigger. "On my mark," Cole whispered. "Take the one on the left. I'll start with Frank." "What about Peter?" "He drops flat the second we fire." Kid's smart enough to know what gunfire means. Cole drew a breath, steadying his aim. Impossible odds, but he'd faced worse and lived.
"You thought of the 9 bodies in Silver Creek?"
The woman and man in the wash, every victim these animals had left in their wake. "Now," he said. 2 rifles spoke as one, fire and thunder splitting the night. Frank Dalton's head snapped back, his body crumpling before he even knew he was dead. Grace's target went down hard, a red flower blooming on his chest. Peter threw himself flat as chaos erupted. Cole fired again, working the lever action, sending another Dalton brother spinning to the ground. Return fire came fast and wild, bullets spanging off rocks around their position. Cole rolled left, came up firing. Grace moved right, her injured shoulder forgotten as she sighted and squeezed. Flores was shouting orders in Spanish, trying to rally his men and figure out where the attack was coming from. 2 of his soldiers broke for their horses. Cole dropped one. Grace took the other. The remaining Daltons scattered, seeking cover, firing at muzzle flashes. A bullet whined past Cole's ear, close enough to feel the wind of its passing. He ducked behind a boulder, ejecting spent shells and reloading. Across the hollow, he saw Peter crawling toward the rocks, trying to escape the crossfire.
A Dalton brother spotted him and raised his pistol.
Grace's rifle cracked. The man fell, clutching his throat. 4 down, Cole muttered, counting. 8 to go. The firefight intensified. Flores had figured out there were only 2 shooters and was organizing his remaining men. They laid down suppressing fire while moving to flank. Smart. Dangerous. Cole shifted position, found new cover. A Dalton gun came around the rocks to his left. Cole's pistol was already drawn. 2 shots. The man went down. 5 down. 7 left. Grace was firing methodically, conserving ammunition, making every shot count. She hit one of Flores's soldiers in the leg, putting him out of the fight. Another shot shattered a rifle in a Dalton's hands, sending him diving for cover. But they were getting surrounded. Flores's men were spreading wide, using the darkness. The remaining Daltons were doing the same. In minutes, Cole and Grace would be caught in a crossfire with no way out. Then Peter moved. The boy had reached the edge of the hollow and found a rifle dropped by one of the dead men. He checked it, took aim at Flores himself, and fired. The shot went wide, but close enough to make Flores duck and swear. It also drew every eye in the hollow. Cole used the distraction. He broke from cover, running low and fast toward the center of the camp. A Dalton spotted him and fired. Cole felt the bullet tug at his coat, but kept moving. He dove behind the weapon crates, came up shooting. 2 more down at close range, their surprised faces frozen in death. 3 left besides Flores. Grace was moving too, circling around the hollow's edge, firing as she went. Her shoulder was bleeding again, dark stains spreading across her dress, but she didn't slow. Another of Flores's men fell to her rifle. A Dalton heard it and charged, knife in hand. Grace swung the empty rifle like a club, catching him across the jaw. He staggered but didn't fall. They grappled, fighting in the dirt. Grace's injured shoulder gave out and the man got on top of her, raising the knife. Cole's shot took him in the side. The Dalton rolled off, gasping. Grace snatched up his knife and finished it. 2 left. Flores and one last Dalton brother. "Enough!" Flores shouted. "Whoever you are, this isn't your fight. Take the gold and go." "I take the guns and go. Everyone lives." Cole didn't answer. He was reloading, eyes scanning for movement. Beside him, Grace had found ammunition and was doing the same. Peter had crawled to a defensible position and was covering the south approach with his captured rifle. "You're surrounded," Cole called back. "Drop your weapons and you might see trial instead of burial." Flores laughed, bitter and cold. "I know that voice. Cole Harris. The Marshal's hunting dog. You think you've won? I think you're down to one man and running out of options. Then you don't know me very well." Flores moved fast, breaking from cover and running straight for Peter. The last Dalton laid down, covering fire, bullets hammering the rocks around Cole and Grace. Flores was almost on Peter when the boy fired. Too rushed, too panicked, the shot went wide. Flores grabbed Peter, hauling him up as a shield, his pistol pressed against the boy's head. "Drop your weapons or I paint these rocks with his brain." Grace froze, rifle halfway to her shoulder. Cole's pistol was aimed, but he had no shot, not with Peter in the way. "Do it," Flores ordered. "Now." "Let him go," Grace said, her voice steady despite everything. "This is between us and the Daltons. You can still walk away." "I think not." Flores started backing toward the horses, dragging Peter with him. "The boy comes with me." "Insurance. When I'm clear, I'll let him go." "You'll kill him the second you're out of range?" Cole said. "Perhaps. But if you shoot, he dies for certain. Your choice." The last Dalton brother used the standoff to make his own move, running for the horses from the other direction. Grace tracked him with her rifle but didn't fire. If she did, Flores might pull the trigger on reflex. Cole's mind raced through options. They were all bad. Flores was too careful, too experienced. He'd used hostages before and knew exactly how to stay alive. In seconds, he'd be mounted and gone, Peter with him. Even if they gave chase, they'd never catch him in the dark. Unless... Cole slowly lowered his pistol. "All right. You win. Just let the boy go when you're clear." "Cole, no!" Grace said. "We don't have a choice." Cole set his pistol on the ground. Flores smiled, showing yellow teeth. "Smart man. You too, woman. Drop it." Grace hesitated, then lowered her rifle. Flores continued backing away, almost to the horses now. The Dalton brother was already mounting. In seconds, they'd be gone. Peter's eyes met Cole's. The boy was terrified, but trying to stay calm. Cole gave him the tiniest nod. Peter's hand, hidden behind his back, moved to his pocket. "When I'm safely away," Flores said, "I'll consider releasing the boy." "Maybe." "You're a liar," Peter said clearly. Flores jabbed the gun against his head. "Quiet, but you're also bleeding." "What?" Peter pulled his hand from his pocket. Blood dripped from his fingers, but it wasn't his blood. It was from the pencil he'd driven deep into Flores's thigh during the grab, using the distraction to strike. The wound was bleeding heavily, soaking through the Mexican's pants. Flores looked down in shock. His grip on Peter loosened for just a heartbeat. Peter twisted hard and dropped. Cole's hand was already moving. His backup pistol, hidden in the small of his back, cleared leather in a smooth draw. The shot was perfect, taking Flores through the chest. The Mexican fell, his own pistol discharging harmlessly into the dirt. The last Dalton brother wheeled his horse around, bringing his rifle up. Grace had already snatched up her weapon. She fired from the hip and possibly fast. The Dalton toppled from his saddle and lay still. Silence fell across the hollow, broken only by the crackle of the dying fire and the labored breathing of the survivors. Cole walked to Flores, checked for a pulse. Nothing. He turned to the Dalton brother, also dead. It was over. Peter sat in the dirt, shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Grace rushed to him, dropping her rifle to wrap him in her arms. The boy buried his face in her shoulder and sobbed. Cole stood watch while they held each other, scanning the darkness for any threats he'd missed. But there was nothing. Just the dead and the survivors in the desert night. After a few minutes, Grace helped Peter stand. The boy was unharmed except for scrapes and bruises. Lucky. They'd all been lucky, though luck seemed like the wrong word for a night that had cost so many lives. "Is it really over?" Peter asked, his voice small. "It's over," Cole confirmed. He gestured to the bodies scattered around the hollow. The Dalton gang is finished. Flores too. The guns and gold go back to the law? And us? Grace met his eyes. Cole considered. By rights, he should take them back to Silver Creek, get Grace proper medical attention, file reports with the marshal. But looking at them, at what they'd survived and what they'd done, he knew they'd earned something more. You two are witnesses, he said. I'll need statements. But that can wait until morning. Tonight, we make camp somewhere away from the bodies and the blood. Tomorrow, we ride for town. What happens then? Peter asked. Then you get to decide where you go next. Your wagon's probably salvageable if we go back for it. Enough supplies to keep moving west if that's what you want. And the gold? Grace's voice was careful. Cole looked at the leather satchel still sitting where Frank Dalton had dropped it. 5,000 in gold coins, maybe more. Blood money paid for weapons that would have killed innocent people. The gold was payment for stolen rifles. It goes back to the army. He paused. But there might be a finder's fee for the civilians who helped recover it. Say, enough to replace what you lost when the Daltons attacked your wagons. Grace's eyes shone with something that might have been tears. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You both killed men tonight. That'll sit heavy in the days to come, deserved or not. They killed our father, Peter said, steel in his young voice. They would have killed us too. But, knowing doesn't always help. Cole had learned that lesson too many times. You did what you had to do. Remember that when the nightmares come. They gathered what supplies they could carry and moved a half-mile from the hollow, finding a sheltered spot between two rock formations. Cole built a small fire while Grace tended Peter's cuts and bruises. The boy was exhausted, falling asleep almost before his head hit the bedroll. Grace sat across the fire from Cole, her shoulder freshly bandaged. The bleeding had stopped, and while the wound would leave a scar, she'd keep the arm. Small victories. I never asked, she said quietly. Why you helped us. You could have left me in that wash, gone after them alone. Cole poked at the fire with a stick. Could have. Wouldn't have been right. That's not much of an answer. It's the only one I've got. He met her eyes across the flames. I've seen too many people give up when things get hard. You didn't. That's worth helping. We could have died tonight. Should have, by all odds. But we didn't, and tomorrow your brother wakes up free instead of dead. That's what matters. Grace was quiet for a while, staring into the fire. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. My father said the frontier makes you hard, or it kills you. I always thought he meant we had to stop caring, stop feeling, to survive. And now? Now I think he meant we have to care enough to fight, even when it's impossible. Especially when it's impossible. She looked up at him. Thank you for teaching me that. Cole nodded, uncomfortable with gratitude. Get some sleep. Long ride tomorrow. What about you?
I'll keep watch.
Grace didn't argue. She lay down next to her brother, one hand resting on his shoulder even in sleep, protecting him still. Cole watched them both, these two people who'd lost everything and kept fighting anyway. The fire burned low. Stars wheeled overhead in their endless dance. The desert stretched out in all directions, vast and indifferent to human struggles. But in this small circle of firelight, 3 people were alive who might have been dead. That was enough. When dawn came, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Cole woke Grace and Peter. They ate a quick breakfast of jerky and water, then packed up camp. The horses were rested and ready. The town of Silver Creek was 2 days' ride east. As they mounted up, Peter spoke. Mr. Harris, I want to draw something for you, for helping us. You don't owe me anything, son. I know. But I want to anyway. Peter pulled out his sketchbook, the same one that had nearly gotten him killed. His pencil moved across a fresh page, quick and confident. When he finished, he tore it out and handed it to Cole. It was a portrait of Cole himself, but not as he was now. In the drawing, Cole stood tall and strong, a hint of a smile on his face, eyes bright with something that might have been hope. It was how Peter saw him. How maybe Cole used to see himself before all the violence and death. Thank you, Cole said, his voice rougher than he intended. He tucked the drawing carefully into his shirt pocket. They rode east toward Silver Creek, toward the law and civilization and whatever came next. Behind them, the sun rose over Copper Ridge, burning away the shadows and the secrets. The vultures would find the bodies soon enough. Let them. The living had better things to do than mourn killers. Grace rode beside Cole, her brother on her other side. They didn't talk much, but they didn't need to. Some things were better left in silence. Some wounds healed better without words. By the time they reached Silver Creek 2 days later, the story had already started spreading. The death of the Dalton gang. The recovery of the weapons and gold. The 3 survivors who'd faced impossible odds and won. People lined the streets to watch them ride in, whispering and pointing. The marshal met them at his office, his weathered face splitting into a grin when he saw Cole. Heard you had some excitement. You could say that. Cole dismounted, helping Grace down. Got statements to give? Bodies to report. The usual. I'll get the paperwork started. The marshal looked at Grace and Peter. You two need a doctor and a good meal in that order. Then we'll get your accounts of what happened. As Grace and Peter were led away to the doctor's office, the marshal pulled Cole aside. 7 men dead. Plus Flores and his crew. That's a hell of a fight for one man. Wasn't just me. Grace Bennett is the reason we're alive. Her and that boy. They've got steel in them. So I hear. The marshal studied Cole's face. You all right? I'm alive. That's good enough. That's not what I asked. Cole thought about the portrait in his pocket, the way Peter had drawn him as someone still capable of hope. I will be. Eventually, the marshal nodded, understanding what wasn't said. There's a finder's fee for the gold recovery. Enough for the Bennetts to replace their wagon and supplies, get wherever they're going. Good, they earned it. There's also a reward for the Dalton gang. $500. It's yours. Cole shook his head. Split it between the families of everyone the Daltons killed. They need it more than I do. The marshal didn't argue. He'd learned over the years that Cole Harris didn't do this for the money. Probably never would. What's next for you? More tracking? I've got 3 separate cases that could use your particular talents. No. The word surprised Cole as much as it surprised the marshal. I think I'm done for a while. Maybe for good. You're the best tracker I've got. Cole looked down the street where Grace and Peter had disappeared into the doctor's office. 2 people who'd faced death and chosen to keep living. Keep fighting. Keep hoping. Maybe it was time he learned to do the same. I'm sure. The frontier's got enough ghosts already. Don't need to add mine to the collection. The marshal clasped his shoulder. Door's always open if you change your mind. I appreciate that. Cole spent the next few hours giving his statement, describing the fight at Copper Ridge in careful detail. When he was finished, the marshal sent him to the saloon, with instructions to eat and rest. Cole did both, finding a quiet corner where he could sit with his back to the wall and watch the door. Old habits. Grace found him there as the sun was setting. Her shoulder was properly bandaged now, her face clean of blood and dirt. She looked younger somehow, despite everything she'd been through. Or maybe because of it. Survivors always did. Peter's sleeping, she said, sliding into the chair across from him. Doctor says he'll be fine. No lasting damage? And you? Same. I'll have a scar, but I've had worse. She paused. The marshal told us about the finder's fee. That's generous. It's fair. You helped recover the gold. You get paid for it. Still, thank you. Grace folded her hands on the table. We're heading west again once Peter's rested. Going to try for California. Start fresh. Good country out there. Lots of opportunity for people willing to work. Will you come with us? The question caught Cole off guard. What? You said you're done tracking. Done with the violence. Come with us. California's big enough for all of us to find new lives. Cole wanted to say yes. Wanted it more than he'd wanted anything in a long time. But he knew better. I'm not fit company for decent people, Grace. What I've done, what I've seen, that doesn't wash off easy. You think I'm decent people after last night? After what I did? You did what you had to do to save your brother. That's different. Is it? Grace leaned forward. Cole, you saved our lives. You could have walked away 12 times and didn't. That's the measure of a man, not how many people he's killed in the name of the law. You don't know me. Don't know what I've done before we met. Then tell me. Whatever it is, I'll listen. Cole was quiet for a long time. Outside, the sun finished setting and lamps were lit up and down the street, the saloon filled with voices and laughter, people living their lives without fear of bullets or death. Normal people. Good people. I was a soldier, Cole said finally, during the war. Did things I'm not proud of. Saw things I can't forget. When it ended, I thought I could go home, be normal again. But the war followed me. It always does, so I became a tracker. Figured if I was going to live with violence, might as well put it to good use. And now? Now I'm tired. Tired of death. Tired of killing, even when it's justified. I look at you and Peter and I see what I could have been if I'd made different choices. Grace reached across the table and took his hand. Then make different choices now. It's not too late, isn't it? No. Her grip was firm, certain. My father used to say the frontier gives everyone a second chance, sometimes a third or fourth. The only question is whether we're brave enough to take it. Cole looked at their joined hands, hers small and smooth against his scarred and calloused ones. He thought about the portrait Peter had drawn, about the man in that picture who still had hope in his eyes. I wouldn't know the first thing about being a farmer or a shopkeeper or whatever people do in California, Grace smiled. Then you'll learn. We all will. That's what news starts are for. And if the violence follows me, if someone from my past comes looking, then Peter and I will help you face it, just like you helped us. She squeezed his hand. You don't have to be alone anymore, Cole. You don't have to keep fighting by yourself. Cole felt something shift inside him, like a lock finally opening after years of rust. He'd spent so long thinking he had to carry everything alone, had to keep walking the blood-soaked path he'd chosen. But maybe Grace was right. Maybe the frontier did give second chances to people brave enough to take them. California, he said slowly, testing the word. California, Grace confirmed. Fresh air. Ocean breeze. No more deserts or gunfights or tracking killers through the Badlands. Sounds too good to be true. Maybe it is. Maybe we'll get there and it'll be just as hard as everywhere else, but at least we'll face it together. Together. When was the last time Cole had been part of it together? When had he last trusted anyone enough to let them in? He couldn't remember. But looking at Grace, at the strength and hope in her eyes, he wanted to try. All right, Cole said. California it is. Grace's smile could have lit up the whole saloon. She stood, pulling him up with her. Come on, Peter will want to know. He's been asking about you every 5 minutes since we got back. They walked through the darkening streets to the boarding house where the Bennetts had taken a room. Peter was awake despite what Grace had said, sitting by the window and sketching by lamplight. When he saw Cole, his face broke into a grin. Mr. Harris, Grace said you might not come. Plans change, Cole said. Does that mean you're coming with us? Peter's eyes were bright with excitement. If you'll have me. Peter whooped and jumped up, then immediately winced and sat back down. His bruises were catching up with him, but his smile didn't fade. We're going to California together, all three of us. That's right. Cole found himself smiling too, something he hadn't done in so long it felt strange on his face. We leave when you're healed up and ready. I'm ready now. You're ready when the doctor says you're ready, Grace corrected, but soon. Maybe a week? Cole could manage a week. He'd spent most of his adult life living day to day, never planning more than a few hours ahead. A week of peace sounded like a luxury. That night, Cole got a room of his own at the boarding house. For the first time in months, he slept without his guns within reach. It felt wrong at first. Dangerous. But gradually, as the night deepened and no threats materialized, he relaxed. The nightmares came anyway, as they always did. But when he woke gasping in the dark, he heard Grace moving in the next room, humming softly to Peter, the sound of family, of safety. The week passed faster than Cole expected. Peter healed quickly, the resilience of youth showing through. Grace's shoulder improved daily, and soon she could use her arm without wincing. Cole helped them shop for supplies, using his knowledge of the trail to ensure they bought what they'd actually need, a new wagon, good horses, food and water for the journey. The marshal watched them prepare with a knowing smile. Never thought I'd see the day Cole Harris rode off into the sunset with a family. Neither did I, Cole admitted. Guess that's what makes it worth doing. You take care of them and yourself. I will. On the morning they left Silver Creek, half the town came out to see them off. Word had spread about the fight at Copper Ridge, about the 3 people who'd taken down the Dalton gang in Flores. They were heroes, at least in the eyes of the townspeople. Cole wasn't sure how he felt about that. Heroes were supposed to be noble and pure.
He'd killed 12 men in one night. That didn't feel heroic.
But when he looked at Grace and Peter, alive and smiling and ready for their new adventure, he thought maybe it didn't matter. Maybe heroism wasn't about being perfect. Maybe it was just about showing up when it mattered and doing what needed to be done. They rode west, following the sun as it arced across the endless sky. The desert gave way to grasslands, then forests, then mountains. Each mile took them further from the blood and violence, closer to whatever waited in California. They talked as they traveled, sharing stories and dreams. Peter sketched constantly, filling his book with images of their journey. Grace sang sometimes, old songs her mother had taught her. Cole listened and watched and slowly, carefully, allowed himself to hope. 3 weeks into the journey, they stopped for the night by a clear stream in a mountain valley. The air was cool and clean, scented with pine. As Grace prepared dinner and Peter gathered firewood, Cole stood at the edge of camp and looked back the way they'd come. Somewhere behind them was Silver Creek. Further still was Copper Ridge, where a dozen men had died in the span of minutes. All of it felt like another life now, something that had happened to someone else. "You all right?" Grace appeared beside him, her shoulder brushing his. "Yeah." Cole turned to her. "Just thinking about how different things could have been if I'd ridden past that wash, if I'd left you there. But you didn't." "No, I didn't." He looked down at her. "I'm glad." Grace smiled and took his hand. "So am I." They stood together as the sun set, painting the mountains in shades of orange and gold. Behind them, Peter was building the fire, humming one of Grace's songs. The horses grazed peacefully. A hawk cried somewhere in the distance. It was a moment of perfect peace, the kind Cole had thought he'd never have again. The frontier had taken so much from all of them, but it had also given them this, each other, a second chance, a new start. California was still 2 weeks away. Who knew what they'd find when they got there? Maybe success. Maybe failure. Maybe something in between, but whatever it was, they'd face it together. Not as a tracker and two survivors, but as something more, something better. A family. Cole squeezed Grace's hand and led her back to camp. They had dinner to make and stories to share and a whole life ahead of them. The ghosts of the past would always be there, lurking in the dark corners of memory. But in the light of the fire, surrounded by people who knew him and chose him anyway, Cole thought maybe he could finally learn to live with them. The desert was behind them. California was ahead. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Cole Harris looked forward to tomorrow.